and welcome to the tutorial for the Emma skirt and dress. This is a 4-layer tiered skirt, and then we're also going to go over the multi-tie dress, and we'll go step by step on how you guys can make this at home. This pattern is available at the link in my bio for purchase. Comes in sizes extra small through 3XL, and again, we do this step by step in the video, so let me know if you guys have any questions, and it also has a written tutorial. You can see this dress is a multi-tie dress, so there are so many different cool ways to wear it. I absolutely adore this pattern. Make sure you guys follow along. I have a ton of new stuff that I'm going to be coming out with soon, and let's get started. Starting off here, I have my main fabric skirt front piece number 1, so my very first top layer. And I'm going to grab my lining piece and I'm just going to look at the difference of those tops is what I'm showing you right now, and we're going to get those to equal. So to do that, I'm going to ruche that very top part until it equals my lining. I'm doing this just manually by pulling my threads. I put this on the longest stitch length and then I go in and I pull my threads. Or you can use a gathering foot. So each of these layers is 1.5 times the length of what it should be, and that's how much you're going to gather, just so you have a general idea. So here I am pulling my threads manually, and I'm going to do this until it matches my lining piece. Once I have all that gathering just how I like it, I'm going to make sure it matches, and then I'm going to grab my back pieces still from my layer 1 with my main fabric, and I'm going to do the same thing. So here I am grabbing my lining for my back piece layer 1s, and I'm going to gather that top edge so that it matches my lining. And again, I'm doing this manually and just pulling those thread strings. Now that my 2 back pieces are done, I'm going to go back to my front piece, and we are going to connect our main fabric pieces for our layer 1. So I'm going to take one side and connect it to its corresponding side. Remember, the center back is always going to be completely straight and your other sides are going to be angled, so you don't get your center back confused with your sides. But we are going to pin these with right sides facing, and we're going to sew down each side to combine our main fabric layer 1 skirt. Once that's done, you're going to have this whole open skirt, and you are just going to hem the bottom, and I'm just doing this with a rolled hem. So I'm going over to my sewing machine and I am just going to roll this as I go and make sure I conceal all my raw edges. This is a pretty beginner friendly pattern, but there is a lot of hemming, just so you know. It's a little time consuming, but just go step by step. Once you've done your rolled hem, you're gonna set that layer 1 main fabric piece aside. I'm gonna grab my layer 2 main fabric pieces. There's my front, there's my 2 backs. I'm going to follow the exact same steps. So I'm going to do my gathers, I'm going to add my backs to the front, and then I'm going to do a rolled hem, and we're going to repeat that for all 4 of our layers. So go back if you need to see those steps. We're going to repeat all those layers, except when you get to number 4, you are not going to hem. The only reason I say this is I suggest people put the dress on, see how much they want to hem it, because you don't want to have to do it twice. So hem all of your layers 1, 2, and 3. Do not hem number 4, and you're going to do all of your gathers so that they equal the amount of your lining. Once you've done all 4 layers, we are going to go back to our lining pieces. So this is my lining number 1 layer. So I have my front piece and my 2 backs, and we are going to connect these at the sides. Remember, your center back is straight and then your sides are angled. So you can see I'm placing these right sides facing. I'm going to pin in place, and then I'm going to sew down, and I'm starting with number 1, then I go to layer 2, then I go to layer 3, and then I go to layer 4, which is what I have laid out right here. We're going to start from 4. So we are starting from the bottom and we're going to work our way up. So this is layer 4. I have grabbed my main fabric piece, and I am going to connect this with the right side of my lining facing the wrong side of my main fabric, and I am just going to base stitch these together at that top edge. Now make sure when you do this, your seams are aligning, so your seams of your ruched main fabric layer should be matching the seams of your lining, and we are just going to base stitch this together. So just a long stitch, just securing these 2 layers together before we move on to the next step. Once I have my lining and my main fabric layer 4 ready, I am going to take my lining layer 3, and I'm going to lay this out. So I have the bottom right there. I'm going to flip it so that the bottom is aligned with the top of my layer 4. So the bottom of my layer 3 aligned with the top of my layer 4 with the right sides facing. And again, you want to make sure you're aligning those seams. So I'm going to do this all the way along. I know this is really, really big pieces, but we're gonna go all the way along and make sure we have all of those put together. We're gonna pin in place and sew it down. Now, once that's done, it's gonna look like this, and I'm going to trim off that seam allowance. So once I've trimmed it off, I'm actually going back in with a zigzag stitch just to help the fraying. You can also do this with a serger and you don't have to worry about trimming, but I just wanna close up those raw edges in between my seams. Now that that's connected, you can see I have my bottom layer number 4 right there, and then my lining number 3, and we are going to add our main fabric number 3 to our lining number 3, much like how we did with our number 4 layer. So we're just gonna base stitch the 2 top edges together. Remember, you're gonna align those side seams, and this is just a base stitch to make sure those 2 layers are combined. Once I have that done, we're gonna repeat what we did for that lining 3 for our lining number 2. So there's my lining number 2 at the bottom of it, and we're gonna align it with the top of layer number 3 with the right sides facing. I'm gonna pin in place, make sure my side seams are aligning, and I'm gonna sew this down. And we're gonna repeat those same steps of once it's sewn, we're gonna trim off the seam allowance, and then I'm gonna go in with a zigzag stitch. And again, that zigzag stitch is optional. It's just gonna help your fabric not fray, or again, you can use a serger. Repeating the same steps as before, here is my main fabric number 2, and I'm gonna take this and I'm going to base stitch it to my lining number 2, just adding on to each of our layers, repeating those exact same steps. And once those are combined, I am taking my lining number 1, combining the bottom to the top edge of my skirt piece number 2, making sure the side seams are aligned, sewing those together, and then trimming off the seam allowance and closing it up with a zigzag stitch. Now this is where we're gonna stop with the skirt. We will add on the main fabric top layer, the first layer, after we finished off the waistband and the top. If you're just doing the skirt, we're just gonna do the waistband, and you can skip over these next couple steps. So set your skirt aside. We're going to get your top strap number 2. You can see that's right here, and your top strap number 1. So it's that extra long one that was cut on the fold. And we are going to combine these with the larger end of your top strap number 2, and then you can choose whichever end you like for your top strap number 1. We're going to place these right sides together and combine those just at that edge right there, pin in place and sew down. Once you've sewn that into place, trim off your seam allowance, and now you're going to repeat these for all 4 of your straps till you have 4 very, very long straps. Once you have those 4 extra long straps all put together, we are going to take one and lay it right sides facing up, and take one more and align it with right sides facing down, so they are right sides facing each other. And we're going to pin all along those extra long sides, and then once we get to the end, we're going to pin the shorter side. This is going to get sewn up. The other side is going to stay open. That's how we're going to flip it inside out. So once you're done pinning, sew all of those along, so all 3 sides, leave that longer edge open. And when you're done, you're just gonna trim off that seam allowance so that this strap sits a little bit flatter and we reduce some of that bulk. Then we're just gonna take our hand inside that one opening slot, and we're gonna flip this inside out. And once you do that, you have your extra long strap that's double-sided for your main fabric. And we're gonna repeat that for both of them, so then you have 2 of your extra long straps that can be worn so many different ways. Now we're gonna get our waistband ready. So we wanna cut a strip of interfacing that is the same as our waistband that we've cut on the fold. And I'm gonna add that to the wrong side of my lining strap piece. You should have one main fabric piece, one lining piece, and I'm gonna add my interfacing. Now it's hard to see, but I have a marking where the center front is. So mark where your center front is, and with the right side of your lining facing up, I'm going to take one strap piece and I'm gonna put that a 1/2 inch over where that center front mark is, and I'm gonna pin that into place. Make sure you're pinning this to the right side of your lining, and also this is the open end, that raw edge of our strap, the bigger end. And we're gonna do that same thing with our other strap. Again, we're going to go a 1/2 inch from that center mark, the very center of our waistband, and I'm gonna pin it in place. Once those are both pinned, I'm going to grab my main fabric waistband, and with the right side facing, so it's facing down, my lining was right side's facing up, I'm going to pin this into place. And I'm going to use a lot of pins here because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything when I sew it down. But I'm going to pin that so I have those straps, the raw edges of my straps are pinned in between those two layers. If you are just making the skirt and you are not adding those straps, you're going to follow those same steps for the waistband. So you're going to take the lining piece and your main fabric piece, place those right sides facing, and pin along just a top edge. Once that's all sewn up, I'm going to trim off my seam allowance, and then I'm going to flip this so it is all right sides out. You can see my lining looks good, my main fabric is out, we have our straps sandwiched in between. And now I'm just going to pin this down so it's easier for me to follow, but I'm going to add a base stitch all along that top edge of the waistband so it looks nice and neat and it makes it a little bit flatter. So here I've added my top stitch, and now we're going to add this waistband and top into our skirt. And again, if you're not doing the top, if you're just doing the skirt, your instructions are the same. You're just adding that waistband end exactly how we do in the next steps. So we are going to grab our skirt. Here is my lining number 1. Everything else is connected at the bottom. I'm going to take my waistband that I just made, and I'm going to place this with the wrong sides facing the wrong sides of my lining skirt one piece. So again, wrong sides to wrong sides, and I'm going to pin this in just a couple places because we're going to pin our skirt piece once we've done this. Now that that's pinned, I'm going to grab my main fabric skirt one piece, my last final layered piece, and I'm going to put this with the right side facing down. So the right side should be facing the right sides of the top and facing the wrong side of my lining, which is facing up. And we're going to sandwich all of those together so that when we flip it, everything is concealed and our raw edges are underneath those layers. Once that's sewn up, just like every other step, we are going to trim off that same allowance, do a zigzag stitch if you would like. And now you have almost a complete dress, except we're going to close up that bottom. So here's my dress. The first thing I'm going to do to help close this up, and this is going to make your life easier, I'm going to do a zigzag stitch, or you can do a serge all along that open back edge just to close them up, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. The one thing I do is I leave out that bottom edge because we still have to hem our lining and our main fabric. So when I do that zigzag stitch along the edge, I leave about 2 inches off of that lining and main fabric bottom. But as you can see, everything else is combined and it's going to make life a little bit easier. So now we are going to add in our zipper. I have my zipper. We're going to unzip. We are going to take one side and flip it so that the teeth are facing away from our center back, and I'm going to pin this into place. We want it again facing away from the center back. We're going to pin this into place. I like to leave about 1 inch off at the tail. I think it makes it a little bit easier to pull up, and when we combine our backs, it makes it a little bit more seamless. But again, just pinning, and we're going to do the exact same thing for our opposite side. So I'm going to take this, flip the teeth away from the center back, pin into place. And once I'm done pinning, I try to make sure that those are super even so that I know that once I've sewn those together, it looks nice and everything looks evened and matched up. Now I'm going to sew that up with a zipper foot on my sewing machine. Make sure it zips nicely before you move on to your next step. And once it does, we are just going to close up that bottom. So I'm going to take this and flip it inside out. And again, I leave 1 inch off of that bottom zipper so that way you can pull it up and out of the way. And we're going to pin this, and when I sew it, I try to get right up to where that zipper sewing stopped. And I'm going to pin this all the way down, except again, I'm leaving a couple inches out at that bottom because I still need to do my rolled hem, and I don't want that lining combined to my main fabric. I think it just makes us a little bit easier once we get to our final step, and you'll see what I mean. But here it is, all closed up. Make sure all your layers are combining evenly when you close up that last thing. And then we're just going to do a rolled hem. So you can see I've left off that bottom because I need space to roll that lining. And I'm just going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to hem both my main fabric and my lining fabric. And follow along. I have so many new patterns coming out that I'm so excited to show you guys. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, concerns, and happy sewing!